Okay, as you can see here, this is the X Factory X5 conversion for the Team Losi XX4. I'm not a XX4 expert or an X Factory expert, so I'm not 100% familiar with the release history of this. I think it was released in the early 2000s, somewhere around maybe 2002, 2003. That's my best guess. But effectively, it was a modification to the Losi XX4. I have an example of a XX4 here. It's just one of my parts cars. And the key feature of the X5 was the change to the belt assembly. So on the XX4, it's a lot like the Losi 22.4, on which it is, which is based on this car actually. The motor is further forward. On the X5, it's actually pushed further back. And because the motor is further forward, you get more weight up front, which actually is partly why it has very good steering. But the problem is, because the motor is right here, you have to run your drivetrain rather, around the motor. So you end up with three belts: rear belt, center belt, and a front belt. And the front and center belts have a 2mm pitch, while the rear belt is a 3mm pitch. It's these 2mm pitch belts that are a real pain, because with those tighter pitch, the belt teeth are actually shallower. So if the belt starts to stretch with thermal cycling, then it will skip on the belt pulleys earlier than you would see with a 3mm pitch belt that has deeper teeth. And also the pulleys themselves, because the belts have shallow teeth, the pulleys have shallow teeth in them, so they will strip faster as well. So there's a more maintenance on tighter pitch belts than you would have with coarser pitch belts, even though the tighter pitch belts are supposed to give you a more efficient drivetrain. So it's a bit of like give and take. This is one of the main reasons, by the way, why I tend towards my Kyosho lasers and my Yokomo YZ10s over something like the XX4, because they have 3mm pitch belts. They're more reliable, they last longer, they're stronger. That's not to say you couldn't make this work very well. But it's just a bit more convenient to run those other cars. So X Factory kind of fixed that by converting this 3-belt setup to a single belt setup. It's a large belt. It kind of weaves around, the front and the rear is one belt that's a 3mm pitch, which is really cool. I just think that's a really neat design. And almost everything else on it is otherwise a XX4, right? The chassis is custom because the motor is moved back to accommodate this different belt arrangement. So they have to make this little, lip piece here to fit the motor. And most of the parts are XX4 parts. The whole front here, XX4. The whole rear here, XX4. Some pieces have to be modified a little bit to make them fit correctly with this. So like the front part of the belt cover, you take the original XX4 part, and you got to cut it so that it mates with this X Factory part here. So there's that part's different, and I think on the rear tower you have to like shave part of the inside to accommodate the curvature of the back side of this in some strange way. But again, otherwise kind of like stock front and rear components. So what else is interesting about this? This particular unit came with a front one-way, so I do want to replace that with a full, just a normal ball diff, so I have full-time four-wheel drive. That shouldn't be too hard. I have plenty of parts. This does come with MIP CVDs front and rear, really nice chrome CVDs in the back. That's pretty cool. The front ones are just normal CVDs, and the dog bones are a bit rusty, so I gotta clean those up. Caster blocks are aluminum. These are clearly aftermarket parts. That's kind of cool. These front arms are some kind of custom arms, or I don't know if they're, maybe custom is the wrong term. They were made by somebody somewhere at some point. They are not stock XX4 arms, although they do have the XX4 arm geometry. These appear to be some kind of a nylon machined arm. So very strong arms, which is great. Whether I would use those in racing, I have to really think about whether that's the best idea, because if the arm's not going to break, it's going to put stress on something else. And what it would likely end up putting stress on would be the front bulkhead. Now I can get aluminum front bulkheads from, Moto Obscura makes a really nice aluminum front bulkhead, so I might do that. But if you have a strong arm and a strong bulkhead, that stress is going to go to the chassis. This chassis is really, really rare, and I don't want to break it. So I'm thinking of taking these arms off and putting the stock XX4 arms on, because that would be the least bad thing to break, given, you know, the option of breaking the chassis or the bulkhead or the arms. But that's the, you know, we'll see what actually happens as I proceed with this project here. But still very cool though that these arms even exist. I think that's really neat. What else is interesting about this car? The slipper arrangement the spur and slipper are custom to the X Factory X5. The original spur gear is an X Factory part, and the slipper arrangement is a bit like what you would see on like the Traxxas Rad 2 or the Traxxas TRX3, those kinds of cars, where you have a spur gear with these little holes in it that you put pegs, like squishy pegs, and then your slipper pads press, or your slipper plates press against that on either side, and that's your slipper. The actual spur gear itself, if you strip that, you got to find a new one. And again, these are X Factory parts that they don't make anymore. So I do understand from some friends on Facebook that you can actually run B4 style spur gears and slipper pads. So thankfully that appears to be possible. So I'm not too worried about the slipper, the spur and slipper arrangement. I will update that to a B4 style arrangement. As for the pulleys, front and rear, I need to do a little bit more research on this. The pulleys that are in the car right now are X Factory pulleys that came with the conversion kit. And it's not clear to me yet if I can run different pulleys, like if these pulleys wear out and I need to replace them, do I have to find another X5 and get pulleys from those? Or can I run something else? The XX4 rear pulley is a 3mm pitch pulley, so maybe that will fit as a replacement option for the X Factory front and rear pulleys. That's something I'll just have to find out, or ask around to see if anybody, you know, has information on that. Other than that, what else is kind of cool? I think these two screws here are for like a tensioner plate that has another pulley on it to adjust the belt tension internally. So that's kind of neat that I can do that without having to rip everything apart. Let's see, what else? Other than that, yeah, well, what I'm basically going to do is, what I plan to do is to just do the usual, like tear this down, clean it up, you know, restore what I can, do some modifications. There's plenty of Moto Obscura parts that I'd like to try out, like the shock tower reinforcements and, you know, maybe the aluminum front bulkhead and other stuff that I can fit on this. For the body, Boki Racing does make a reproduction X5 body. I did check their website tonight and it looks like they're out of stock, so, you know, eventually if they make more of them, I'll pick one of those up. I don't have the original X Factory wing. I think this is a Techno wing. But the exact wing type I don't really care, as long as I have a wing that I can use and cut the way I want it to. Yeah, so other than that, I mean, this is in very nice condition otherwise, and I really look forward to building this as a nice, or, you know, let's say restoring this as a nice project and comparing it to the XX4 that my friend Mark made for me. And I'd like to run them both at Vonats on a year, where I can run them side by side or back to back and see how they compare in terms of their driving. So that's a goal of mine to have ready probably by next year, because I have other plans for Vonats for this year. But yeah, I just figured I'd share this with you guys. I do have an X5 now. It's a really cool car. I've always been interested in these, and I'm glad that I finally managed to get one. So that's it for now. Thanks for watching.